Hello and welcome to part 3, an introduction to recipes. In this episode, we're not going to do any fun stuff. Oh no, we're going to learn theory. That's right, it's theory time. Okay, so as we saw last time, it is shockingly easy to get an UMA into your scene. Let's just do that again. So we'll go to getting started, stick our UMA DCS prefab into the scene, and we will create ourselves an empty game object. And we'll call this UMA Guy. That looks good, UMA Guy. And to turn this into an UMA, let's just reset his position and add a dynamic character avatar. The last thing we did, we set an active race, so I'm going to set human male DCS. Now there are a lot of options in here, and hopefully by the end of this session these should make a little bit more sense. So let's hit human male DCS, and when we press play, so there he is. Very easy to get going. What I'd like to do now is just explore a little bit of what happens. Now we looked at this before and saw that our dynamic character avatar created this UMA data object at runtime. If you hit stop, that disappears. So I want to look a little bit more in depth at what's going on here. So I like to think of the dynamic character avatar as the nucleus of our UMA. This component that we add to our game object, we're going to become very familiar with this over the next few lessons, because basically it controls everything. When we start writing code to control our UMAs, this is the component that we're going to hook into and talk to. Okay? But today's subject that I really want to get our head around is the highest level of the many components we're going to learn about that help define our UMA. And this is called a recipe. Now you can see I've got some recipes over here. We'll have a little look at these and what they are later, but there are two different types. So we'll come back to these in a second. First thing, I want to explore the idea that when we run our dynamic character avatar, it creates this UMA data object. And as we've seen, the UMA data actually has two different panels. There's a DNA panel and a slot panel, and they show us some different things. So the DNA panel, if we have a little look at that, the DNA basically gives us a bunch of sliders, very easy to play with, that allow us to define the shapes of our UMA. So we can change the face, body, anything like that. So this is a fairly easy concept to grasp. We'll have a look at this later on, but generally I don't think anybody's struggling with that one. What I want to look at here is this slots area. Now, if we just look a little bit closer at what we've got here. At the top we've got something called shared colours. We're going to look at that later on, but these are part of our UMA. There's an area in the middle for editing, which we're going to leave for the moment, but what I really want you to focus on is down at the bottom here, and if you're looking at this live in Unity you may see something different. Just hit collapse all just to make this view nice and simple like I have it here, and what you'll see is there's actually several different components that are making up our UMA. And what these items are called, well, they're called slots. If we have a little look, these slots are individual meshes that we stitch together in order to create our UMA character. If you do open these up, or the view when it's not collapsed, when it's expanded, you will see inside we've also got something called overlays. Overlays are the textures that go on top of our meshes to make our UMA look a little bit more human. So the whole point I'm trying to get across here is when we created our UMA, all of these slots and overlays were added automatically. We didn't define this at all. And these things, when we have a collection of them together, this is what's known as a recipe. Okay, so we didn't pick that recipe. Where did that come from? Well, it's pretty straightforward. This actually came from the dynamic character avatar, and when we set our active race, this human male DCS actually calls something called a base recipe. Now a base recipe is something that defines a naked Uma character, with no accessories, no clothing, but these things are basically our races. Now if we quickly flick back over into Unity, this human male DCS, if I have a little look through our folder structure, so let's have a look in Uma. I'm going to look in content, and you'll see there are 3 folders we're going to make a lot of use of here. Probably the one we're not going to touch much is the one we're looking in now, so this Uma core. If I open that Uma core and look in human male, you can see there's a lot of different folders, but I'm particularly interested in this recipes folder. If I open this up, we have 2 in here. We've got base recipes and wardrobe recipes. If I look in the base recipes, let's just move this along a little bit. Look at this, you can see the human male DCS base recipe. Let's just click on that and have a look in the inspector. And look at this, DNA and slots. Let's have a look at the slots. Here we are, there's our shared colours, and you can see here what I was talking about. This is a huge amount of data taking up some real estate on our screen. I'm just going to hit collapse all, but look at this. Once I've done that, look at that, doesn't it look familiar? So this is what is being called by our Uma guy when we select human male DCS. In fact, if I open this up and we have a look at the other human males, you can see there's our human male base recipe there. There's our human high poly male. And again, you'll find the same in the female components. So that's just so you understand what's in there. We don't need to mess around with that unless we start creating our own races. So there we have it. That is what a base recipe is. It's something that defines a list of slots and overlays that give us our basic underlying Uma for us to begin to modify by adding clothes and accessories to. The next thing I want to introduce you to is something called a wardrobe recipe. Now a wardrobe recipe is used to define these clothing items. It's a little bit more complex than a base recipe because as well as containing slots and overlays, it can also contain things that suppress other elements of our Uma. So we can, for example, hide the legs when we put these jeans on to stop any of the geometry poking through. We can also hide individual triangles of a mesh. We can get really deep down and fiddle around with our Uma. We can get it to suppress different wardrobe elements. So say for example we have hair added onto our Uma, we can get a wardrobe recipe for a helmet to suppress the hair while the helmet is being worn. When you take the helmet off, the hair will reappear on your Uma. Okay, so that's enough theory for now. Hopefully you've got a good understanding of recipes, the 2 different types. What we'll do in the next episode is we'll put what we've learned into practice and start modifying our Uma. Thank you for listening. So I'd just like to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. These are the people who made this video possible. And if you'd like to support me, please click the link that appears at the end of this video. I'll see you next time.